Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am sorry for the delay, but there was a reason why the starting time of the class had to be delayed. It's hopefully going to be just for this Saturday, and we will be starting on time in the coming Saturdays. We were to begin Surah Al Baqarah, the second chapter of the Quran, and we have already done Surah Al Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, which is actually essentially a prayer from all good humans for God Almighty to send down, reveal His guidance. Ehdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Show us the right path. Make it convince us. Design it in a manner that we get inclined towards it. We are desperately looking for guidance from you. So God sent His guidance in the form of the Quran and designed it in a manner that the prayer that mentioned the necessity of that guidance was placed at the very beginning of the Quran, and the rest of the Quran is a response to that prayer. I received a few questions in response to my first two lectures, wherein some people had this understanding. I'm sure it must have been because of my incomplete, unclear presentation of the message, that they thought that the Surah Al-Fatiha was revealed to somebody else or was outside the Quran. Not at all. Surah Fatiha is very much a part of the Quran. However, the message of the surah takes into consideration the spiritual, intellectual, moral needs of the people who, just before the revelation of the Quran began, were desperately looking for guidance from God, from the heavens. And in came that guidance. So it says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alif Lam Mim. A'udhu billah, I seek refuge in God, minash shaitanir rajim, from the evil whispers of Satan, the rejected one. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. The Quran, the way it has been designed, the way it has been presented, is comprised of 7 surah groups, in a way that each group begins with one or more Meccan surahs and ends with one or more Madinan surahs. So we have a cluster, groups of 7 surah groups, so that when we read the Quran, we are able to read it over and over again, the Quranic themes presented in different ways, different styles, some groups emphasizing one aspect of the Quranic message more than the other. All groups mention all important themes, but there is a certain emphasis that you find in some groups on certain subjects compared to others. First group of the Quran is comprised of 5 surahs, 5 chapters. Surah Al-Fatiha is the first one. It's the only Meccan surah of this group, and there are 4 Madinan surahs in this group: Al Baqarah, Al Imran, Nisa, An-Nisa, and Al Ma'idah. There is another aspect of the Quranic presentation, the way it's found now with us, the only compilation, the only sequencing of the book that is valid now, it has in its 114 surahs, chapters, minus 6, 108 surahs that are paired together in two pairs, two surahs with, comprising of a pair. So we've got 54 surah pairs in the entire Quran. The 6 exceptions are there for good reasons. So when we are starting Surah Al Baqarah, let me just mention that this surah is paired with the next surah, Al Imran. And if you look at the two surahs, them being in pairs is pretty clear, because both begin with Alif Lam Mim. Neither does Surah Al-Fatiha nor the fourth Surah Al-Nisa begin with Alif Lam Mim. So it's a clear indication from the Almighty that this surah and the next surah, they have quite a few things in common. There are quite a few other things that the two surahs have in common, which make them pairs, partners. But right now, let me start with the contents of Surah Al-Baqarah. Alif Lam Mim. These 3 letters, which are not joined together to form a word, so we call them disjointed letters, huruf muqatta'at. That's what it's called in Arabic. These 3 letters are the names of this surah and the other surahs which begin with some such or different disjointed letters, huruf muqatta'at. What do they mean? Well, they do mean something, even if we don't understand them. The Almighty would want us to do research, keep reflecting and pondering, so as to be able to find out what exactly could they mean. In order for Him to encourage us to know and believe that these letters that precede or are found at the beginning of certain surahs, they do really mean something, and what they mean has some strong relationship with the subject, the contents of the surah. This the Almighty has clarified or helped us to know in Surah Al Qalam, which is also called Surah Noon, which is the 68th chapter of the Quran. It begins with one harf, one letter, Noon. It is quite well known that the word Noon means fish. It has actually been used to mean fish in one of the chapters of the Quran. So a relatively shorter surah, Surah Al Qalam or Surah Noon, Surah Al Qalam and Surah Noon, begins with Noon. Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. And it's not just a coincidence that you find that towards the end of this surah, there is this mention of the Prophet who was swallowed by a fish. And the Almighty is asking the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, to be patient and to not be like the one who was swallowed by a fish. وَلَا تَكُنْ كَصَاحِبِ الْحُوتِ. Hut is another word for fish. So the surah begins with Noon, and Noon has a definite meaning, and that meaning has a place in the contents of the surah. All this is not accidental. It's because the Almighty is telling us that in His book, whatever is mentioned deserves to be taken seriously, deserves to be looked at with deep reflection. So, Alif Lam Mim. This is Surah Alif Lam Mim. As I said, it's the name of the surah. The next surah is also given the same name. The two Quranic names being the same is a reflection of the fact that the two surahs have quite a lot in common, and they are partners, they are in pairs. Zalikal Kitab. This is the book. That is, this surah and the book of which it is a part is actually Al-Kitab, the book that was being awaited. So there was a book that people were waiting for. As I mentioned in the description of Surah Al-Fatiha, people were desperately looking towards the heavens for some guidance to be revealed. More particularly, people of the book who actually knew that there is going to be a book and a prophet who is going to bring that book, who is bound to come, and whose arrival, looking at the prophecies that are mentioned in the book, is round the corner. It's just about to take place. So the Almighty is saying, Zalik al-Kitab. This is the book. That is the awaited book, the book of God, which was to be revealed, whose expectations had grown very high, and here it comes. La rayba fi. There is no doubt about it. That is, there is no doubt about this reality, that this is the book that was being awaited. I mean, you look at Surah Al-An'am, 6th chapter of the Quran, verse 20, and you would see that the Almighty is mentioning about the Quran and the Prophet that yarifunahu kama yarifuna abnahum. They recognize him quite the same way as they recognize their children. In other words, what the Almighty is saying is that the reality that this prophet is from God and the book that he's brought is God's book is something which the people of the book and their scholars know absolutely clearly. So, Zalik al-Kitab, this is the book, the awaited book. La rayba fi. There is no doubt about it. There is no doubt about this reality. Hudal lil muttaqeen. This book has become a book of guidance for the God-fearing, for these God-fearing people. When I'll talk more about the subject matter of Surah Al Baqarah, I'll tell you that the surah, the chapter, actually has two big subjects. One is addressed to the people of the book, more particularly the Jews, and the second part addresses Muslims, the later part, the second part, wherein they have been given a number of Sharia injunctions, expectations. In this first part, where the people of the book in general and the Jews in particular have been addressed, the Almighty is at the very beginning mentioning that this is the book that good people of the book were actually awaiting. They knew that there is a book that was to come, and that book has arrived. And the Almighty says, La rayba fi. There is no doubt about it. Hudal lil muttaqeen. It has become a book of guidance for the God-fearing. So, this book had already done its job to many people. There were people who were influenced by the book, impressed by it, and they had started acting upon the expectations of the book. The Almighty is pointing to the Jews, inviting them, in an indirect, subtle way, by referring to these people, the believers, the companions of the Prophet, and saying that these God-fearing people are the ones for whom the book has become a source of guidance. Hudal lil muttaqeen. Allazina yu'minuna bil ghayb. Those who believe in the unseen. Yu'minuna bil ghayb means they believe while they are a part of the world where many realities are not visible. When you say yu'minu billah, it means he believes in Allah. However, yu'minu bil ghayb doesn't mean that he believes in ghayb. What it means is that he believes while he himself is in ghayb. There is a technical explanation to it. I won't delve into it, but for the time being, let's accept this explanation. And if you will ask for the technical reasons, I'll explain it. That the verse is saying that this book has become a book of guidance for the God-fearing people who believe in the unseen. Now, what does it mean? What it means is that the Almighty is informing us that the world that we are a part of has two categories of realities. It's comprised of two types of realities. There are realities that we can perceive through our five senses. We can either see them or hear them or smell them or touch them or taste them. There are other realities which we cannot perceive through our five senses, but they too are realities and they need to be believed in. Why? Because the arguments, the evidences supporting their existence, supporting the fact that they do really exist, they are so strong and overwhelming that those arguments cannot be denied. And God-conscious people, muttaqeen, are the ones who acknowledge those realities. So, Iman, faith, belief, contrary to the understanding of some religious people, is the act of acknowledging those realities which are not visible, which cannot be seen, and they have been presented by prophets, acknowledging them because the arguments supporting their existence are so strong that not acknowledging them would mean that the person is rigid, is unreasonable, and is therefore not worthy of the Almighty's respect. So, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, these God-fearing people are the ones who believe in the realities that cannot be seen. وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, and they establish prayers. They pray regularly. Iqamat salat means to take prayer seriously, all components of it, to pray on time at the appointed timings, to pray with wudu, ablution, to face the Qibla, ideally to do it in Jamaat, and to take it seriously. So, God-fearing people who believe in the unseen realities of God, the life hereafter, and divine revelation that was revealed to the prophets, the most significant and prominent manifestation, outcome of their faith is that they say their prayers regularly. يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and from what we have given them, they spend. That is, the other thing that they do is, apart from praying, is to spend on the poor, the deprived people, from the wealth and sustenance which God has given them. I mean, God has given them wealth in a manner that some part of it is meant for them to spend on themselves, and some part in God's scheme is meant to be spent on others. So, those who are God-conscious people, who believe in the unseen realities, they say regular prayers because they want to thank God, because they want to express their feelings of humbleness to God, and they spend their wealth which God has given them, mimma razaqnahum, from what we have given them in the form of sustenance, they spend to help others. So, the Quran, you would see, whenever it talks about a Muslim, who a Muslim is, what are the prominent features of a Muslim, it just talks about two things. They say their prayers regularly, and they give zakat, or they spend in the way of God from the wealth that God has given to them. It seems as if the two expectations, when they are satisfied, it is as if, the entire religious demand has been fulfilled. Well, in a nutshell, basically, in principle. All else are details. Why is that so? It's because religion, God's message, requires us to attend to the duties and expectations of God on the one hand, and attend to the expectations and duties towards fellow humans on the other. If somebody is able to do both, to do what God deserves and to do what fellow humans deserve, then that person is a truly religious person in the eyes of God. So God requires us to do both, to pray to the Almighty for the blessings, the kindness, all the manifestations of His mercy that we are benefiting from. We thank Him, and we are expected to show mercy, to show concern for fellow humans who have been deprived of good quality life because of one reason or another, and we help them out as well. It says, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ, and those who believe in what has been revealed to you, O Prophet. That is, these God-fearing people, they believe in what has been revealed to you. وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ, and what has been revealed before you as well. In other words, these believers are not biased people. They don't just stick to only one understanding and reject all others as unacceptable. True believers are the ones who not only acknowledge what has been revealed to you, O Prophet, they also simultaneously acknowledge and believe in what was revealed before you. Why? Because they are looking for the truth. They are the ones who want to know what the truth is, no matter wherever it comes from, whether it has been revealed to you or whether it has been revealed to prophets who came before you. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ, and as far as the hereafter is concerned, the life hereafter, they believe in it strongly. They are certain about it. That is, they have no doubts about the fact that there is going to be a life after death, when humans are going to be raised again back to life, and they will be made to respond to the questions of accountability that would be posed to them about the way they led this life. They believe that it's a reality. All these features of believers are the ones which the Jews of the time when the Quran was being revealed, and there were people around in the Arabian Peninsula in general and in Medina in particular, who were not living up to these expectations. They were the ones who didn't used to say their prayers, the ones that would not spend on others. They would not believe in any revelation except the one that belonged to their community. And about the life hereafter, they had serious doubts. Even if they believed, they thought that they are the only ones who are going to succeed over there, and therefore they don't need to fear the consequences of the hereafter. So the Almighty is saying that not they, but these believers, God-fearing people, are the ones who are أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. These are the people who are on the path of guidance, هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ, from their Lord. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And these are the people who are going to succeed, who are the real successful cases of God's servants. Guidance was asked for in Surah Al-Fatiha, and a brief but clear picture of who the guided people are has been presented in these verses. So, in other words, the answer comes right at the beginning, and then obviously the rest of the Quran clarifies and further answers the queries of people regarding what guidance is. It goes on to describe in various different possible ways that could influence human mind and heart, how guidance is to be sought, what guidance actually is, what is going to please God, and what kind of behavior the Almighty would not expect. So that's the first part of Surah Al Baqarah. In actual fact, the first 39 verses of this surah, a very long surah, the longest surah of the Quran. It has 286 verses. The first 39 verses are a prelude. They are a beginning preface on which the rest of the surah then would be built up. So right at the beginning, the Almighty has given a picture of who the guided people are and has invited others to adopt the same ways. Then the Quran moves on to mention the other extreme, the people who have unfortunately chosen to be misguided people. So the Quran says, "Innal lazina kafaru," as for those who have chosen to reject the truth. Kafara means he rejected the truth and rejected it knowingly. Obviously, if you don't know, you don't reject a truth. Unfortunately, the way we translate kufr, it seems as if we think that kufr is to be a non-Muslim. So it's used synonymously with not being a Muslim. Well, the reality is that kufr is to reject the truth. Whether a non-Muslim rejects the truth coming from God or not is something only God can decide, because He is the only one who knows as to who knew what God's message was and who did not know it. On the Day of Judgment, He is going to decide it on the basis of the information that would be available to people, that was available to people in this worldly life. Honestly, there could be two possibilities. A, that there would be some non-Muslims who would be found guilty of not acknowledging the truth of God's message the way it was presented by the last prophet, may God's mercy be on him. They didn't do it, they didn't accept it, and they knowingly rejected it. They are the people who are going to be declared guilty. But there could be other people who could be found not guilty because of the fact that they did not actually come to learn about it properly. Those people, Muslims, who were responsible to present God's message to them with their good behavior and good presentation, did not do their job. So those who could not understand and accept it would not be held responsible for not accepting the message of God. That's for the hereafter and for the Almighty to decide. The Almighty declares that He is absolutely fair. He is not biased. He condemns people who are biased. How could He ever do anything that would be based on prejudice and bias? But there were people, and indeed, when the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, himself was delivering the message, there were people who became ultimately kafirs by denying the truth knowingly. So the Almighty is mentioning about them. Innal lazina kafaru, indeed those who are bent upon rejecting the truth. Sawa'un alayhim, O Prophet, it's equal regarding them. It makes no difference as far as they are concerned. Anzartahum, whether you warn them, am lam tunzirhum, or you don't warn them, la yu'minun, they are not going to believe. That is, this verse is giving comfort to the Prophet, encouraging him, asking him not to be dejected, not to be disappointed by the behavior of some people who are not accepting your message. As a noble human, as a person who was kind, who was always taking the blame on himself, the Prophet used to wonder as to why people are not believing. What is the reason? Is there anything more that I could do to help them believe? So, what's going on? Why not? The Almighty is comforting him and saying, Innal lazina kafaru, look here, as for those who are bent upon rejecting the truth, Sawa'un alayhim, it is just the same in their case. Anzartahum am lam tunzirhum, whether you warn them or you don't warn them. La yu'minu, they are not going to believe. Your warning or not warning are both going to be the same. Why? Khatamallahu ala qulubihim. God has stamped their hearts. God has put a seal on their hearts. Wa ala sam'ihim, and on their ears. Wa ala absarihim ghishawa, and before their eyes there is a curtain. Walahum azabun azim, and for them there is a big punishment. What does that mean? I'll finish today's presentation by making an attempt to clarify what it means and by again translating these verses. You see, there are some people who are led to erroneously believe on the basis of this verse and many others that there are some people who come to this world with destiny to believe because God has chosen to guide them. And there are others who come with a destiny, predetermined fate of not believing because God has put a seal on their hearts and their ears, and there's a curtain in front of them, so they're prevented from believing. Honestly, if that's the claim, then they're not to be blamed. But obviously it's not the right understanding. When you read the Quran and you go on reading it, you would find that this brief description has been explained. And that's what the Quran does over and over again. It explains its own verses. And that's what the Quran has mentioned, that's the style of its presentation. He has made his presentation in a manner that the same realities, principles are mentioned briefly and then they are expanded. They're explained in detail. Kitabun uhkimat ayatuhu thumma fussilat. It's a book whose verses have been made muhkam, comprehensive, brief, and then they have been expanded. So the expanded understanding, the detailed understanding of this verse number 7 is that the Almighty tells us that there is a law, a principle that God follows in deciding the all-important question of who is to be guided and who is to be misguided. All humans have been given the same pure nature. All humans have been given freedom. Some people use their freedom positively, correctly. Others use it incorrectly. And the end result is that we decide our own destiny. Some people, by correctly using their freedom, in the light of their nature that God has given them, when they move in the right direction, God helps them in getting guided further. Why? Because they valued what God had given them. God enables them to value still further what else He has given humanity in the form of divine revelation. So they are able to see that this divine revelation too is from God, like their nature is from God. But those who, on the contrary, are bent upon ignoring the calls of human nature, the demands and expectations of their conscience, and they keep doing it because of their base desires, because of their ego, their arrogance, and they continue doing it, they are gradually, not immediately, gradually deprived of the facility of them being able to recognize and acknowledge what the truth is. So this reality has been mentioned to the Prophet for him to appreciate and therefore realize that it's none of his faults that these people are not believing. Instead, it is their fault that they are not believing. So the Quran says, Khatam Allahu ala qulubihim. God has put a seal on their hearts. Their hearts were given the opportunity, the ability, the capacity to understand the truth, to appreciate it, to believe in it, and to come close to God. They rejected the possibility. They did not avail the facility. And therefore, when they did it on a continuous basis over a long period of time, the Almighty at some stage decides that enough is enough. I'm not going to allow them to get guidance any further. Their hearts are rendered incapable of appreciating the truth. According to the Quran, when truth is presented to them, from inside, they have a feeling that they're repelling it. They don't feel comfortable. And that's why guidance doesn't get down to them. Their ears, they don't hear the truth. They hear voices, they hear words, but truth doesn't get down to them. They see realities, incidents which would ordinarily open the eyes of a good human, but their eyes are shut. There is a curtain in front of them which doesn't allow them to see the realities the way they are. So the Almighty says that it's not your fault, O Prophet. You keep doing your job and you're doing it in an excellent way. But there are people who are bent upon rejecting the truth. It is equal in their case whether you warn them or you don't warn them. They are not going to believe. Why? Because God has stamped their hearts and their ears, and there is a curtain, there is a shield in front of their eyes, and for them is going to be big punishment. Let me translate these verses once again, and let me see if there are one or two questions I can answer them, but then I move on to the next program, which I have to start shortly. We started Surah Al Baqarah today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Alif Lam Mim. This surah is Alif Lam Mim. Zalikal Kitab. This is the book, the awaited book, the book from God. La Rayba Fi. There is no doubt about it. There is no doubt about this reality. Hudal lil Muttaqeen. This book has become a book of guidance for the God conscious. Alladhina yu'minuna bil ghayb. Those who believe in the unseen realities. Wa yuqimuna as-salat. And they say their prayers regularly. They establish the system of prayer. Wa mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun. And from what we have given them in the form of sustenance, they spend some part of it on others. Wallazina yu'minuna bima unzila ilayk. And those who believe in what has been revealed to you. وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ. and what has been revealed before you. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And as far as the hereafter is concerned, they are very confident about it. أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. Such are the people who are on the path of guidance from their Lord. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And such are the people who indeed are going to succeed. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. As far as those who are bent upon denying the truth, سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. O Prophet, it's just the same in their case. أَنذَرْتَهُمْ. Whether you warn them, أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ, or you do not warn them, لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. They're not going to believe. خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ. God has put seal on their hearts. وَعَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِمْ. And on their hearing ability. وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ. And before their eyes there is a shield, there is a curtain. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And for them there is a big punishment. I can see if there are any questions. My mobile phone is 033549444936, but I'm glad there is no question today. So 033549444936. I beg your leave today, but inshallah next Saturday I'll start from 2 and go until 3. Today I have something else to do. I had to come to Karachi and I was hoping that I'll reach early, but you know about our flights, so it was a bit delayed. But inshallah next Saturday again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.